So if you walk away with one thing from my little segment here, and one thing only, it is the best time to be a Ford performance enthusiast geek ever. And I don't say that lightly, right? I've been, like I said, I've been part of Team Ford Racing, I've been part of SVT, and I've been part of the Shelby team, and there is no better time than we've been around from the 60s, even some of us who would say like from the old SVT days when we did Contour and we did Focus and we did Lightning and we were starting Terminator and we did the Cobra R. You know, that was the best times. I'll tell you right now, from now to going into the future, and we'll talk a little bit about it, there is no better time to be an enthusiast of Ford performance. And I want to kind of have you guys walk away with 4 reasons why I say that. First, while I don't have SVT tattooed on my body someplace where I can't show it, I was a firm brand advocate of that. Now, the SVT or Team RS or FPV out of Europe or Ford Racing and Ford Racing Performance Parts that is now Ford Performance is not a marketing deal. It is fundamentally changing how we are going to business that will allow us to deliver from when this car, which just got okay to buy on Friday, through 2020, we will have 12 new performance derivatives being delivered. That isn't just a name change. That isn't just a brand marketing activity. That fundamentally changes how we have gone to business. And let me tell you a little bit about it. We have our Team RS over in Europe, and I believe they've been doing it for 30-ish years, right? They are as enthusiastic and out there as the SVT people in the States and as the Ford Performance, the old FPV out of Australia. I mean, they're as far out there going along. Ford Performance out of Australia, Ford Racing, the old Ford Racing organization from the Ford Performance parts that go on the car, the aftermarket stuff that we bolt onto it, to the engineering teams that work with the teams that race in the sanctioned series we participate. Back before the start of Ford Performance, when we announced it in November, they all worked for separate organizations. They all reported to different people, and in some cases used different systems to actually do your reporting. Now, we're all pretty much enthusiasts here. We'll go up to parties, right? And we'll start talking to somebody, and all of a sudden we'll see their eyes roll back into their head because we're boring them, because we're talking about my car does 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds, right? But then we'll gravitate towards the people who are like us and enjoy that stuff. The engineering men and women did as well socially, but structurally they were under different organizations. So in November, when we announced, Dave Parasak is the Global Performance Director. He was the same guy who's been working on Mustang since 2010. He was the father of the Boss 302 program from an engineering standpoint and launched the 2015 Mustang, the 1964 limited edition. He has his geek bona fides, is what I'm saying. He's running the engineering organization worldwide. And a gentleman by the name of Henry Ford III, direct DNA from Henry Ford, is running the marketing globally. It is a structural change of how we're going to business. It is not a marketing change for changing the name from SVT or RS or FPV or Ford Racing. It really is a different way to go to business with 2 wonderful enthusiasts leading that organization. Right? The Dodge commercials. Have you guys seen them? Right? They have the Dodge brothers, card-carrying members of the Screen Actors Guild Union who are representing the Dodge brothers, right? We actually have direct lineage from our first race car driver, Henry Ford I, running the performance marketing end. So I guess what I'm saying is structurally, Ford Performance and the men and women who are working on the engineering, production, and marketing have one common goal. That is to put a smile on the faces of enthusiasts around the world. And we think we have the organization capable of doing that. So that's reason number 1. Reason number 2 is the competition. Why the competition? Well, when we did the Boss 302 and we did it at Laguna Seca, we compared it to a specific vehicle. And it was 3 seconds a lap faster at Laguna with not one of our drivers, but a local shoe than a BMW M3. You can believe that the BMW people were not pleased about that. This knuckle-dragging, solid rear axle car just beat us at Laguna Seca, right? That step up in competition benefits us because they're not going to sit there on their laurels, right? Their next generation, if you've driven it, pretty stout, right? My favorite one is the GM folks. When we unveiled the 662 horsepower fire-breathing monster in November, we had Carroll there, we had Fields there. Well, GM had announced something that they thought was pretty cool at that same auto show. They didn't take too kindly to having that announced at the same time. So what did that cause them to do? Well, if you've driven the ZL1, it's a stout car. I mean, they did a really good job on that. So every time, the Hellcat, I haven't had a chance yet to do a quarter mile in there. I want to, but I can only imagine. Every time the competition steps itself up, the men and women of Ford Performance don't want to hit their butts beat, so they're going to step it up. And that game keeps going up. And who does that benefit in the long run? That benefits the enthusiasts, right? Because the stuff that we're going to deliver, the thing that you're going to ride in and you're going to drive over here, you're going to feel that, and you know what? The GM engineers are going to feel it, the Porsche engineers are going to feel it, the BMW engineers are going to go out there, drive it, feel it, and go, oh my God. And they're going to step up their game, which is going to cause us to step up our game. So, our organization change. The competition, 2 reasons why it's the best time to be a Ford Performance enthusiast. I'd like to go a little esoteric for reasons number 3 and 4. Kind of touched upon it a little bit. The Ford family. The Ford family are enthusiasts just like us. Let me tell you a couple of stories that just, I'm not just making this stuff up. Has anybody ever gone on to the Miller Motorsports website? Okay, if you click on the video testimonials there, have you seen Bill Ford on there? Bill Ford actually took his son Nick and a friend and his 2 sons, and they went out there to do the class on their own time. And at the end, they filmed him. Now, the Ford PR folks weren't aware of that at the time, right? But he's out there telling them why he enjoyed the 3-day class at Miller to learn how to drive performance. When the leader of the Ford family within Ford Motor Company and the chairman of the board of directors spends his time to go out to the track and drive Mustang Performance to learn how to drive enthusiastically, that's kind of a really good thing. There are other members of the Ford family. Henry Ford III, who's running the marketing. I mean, all 3 are Calvin, so Edsel Ford. He's a member of the board of directors. A true enthusiast of vehicles, has been involved in Ford racing and SVT, as long as I've been doing this. His sons, Henry, Calvin, Stuart, and Albert. They own GT350 post titles, Boss 302s, GT500 KRs, and those aren't cars, just so you're aware, that you can call up and order out of the executive catalog. They actually, just like everybody else, have to go to a dealer and buy that car. And they have performance-based derivatives just like you guys here. So the Ford family, starting back with, how many people know how Ford Motor Company was founded? Don't answer this, you can't, you guys can't answer this. We celebrated 100 years of Ford racing 18 months before we celebrated 100 years of Ford Motor Company. All right? Henry Ford, the original, working for Thomas Edison at the time, still had a dream to put America on wheels. And how did he go about doing that? He built a car called Sweepstakes. He challenged Alexander Winton, who was the reigning champion from New England at the time. He won the race. Technologically, the car wanted to prove that he could do something on the racetrack to prove that he could run a company. And he did what any racer does today. Present your sponsors accurately, right? What did he do? He sold the car that day. He sold the trophy from Tiffany's. It's a Tiffany boat. We're still looking for that trophy today. And he convinced investors who were watching the race in the stands to invest in him to start a company 18 months later. He retired 1-0 as a race car driver, right? He had him and his crew chief Spider Huff. I don't know if you've seen it. Crew chiefs today sit on top of pit boxes, have spotters up above. Then in the day, they actually rode on the side of the cars. So him and Spider Huff were riding a 10-lap race out there in Grosse Pointe, Michigan with Spider hanging on the side. When we celebrated 100 years of Ford racing, we did so at the Henry Ford in the Greenfield Village. We had the top 10 Ford performance drivers of all time on the stage, and it was Lynn St. James and Sir Jackie Stewart, the Wood brothers, Carroll. I don't have all 10 of them out here, but we had them out there. We actually rebuilt the original car. We didn't know we had it, right? The Henry Ford had bought what they thought was a replica, and we were able to verify that it was actually the original car using the Ford archives and the people at the Henry Ford Museum. We actually rebuilt the car with period correct components, and we brought in Alexander Winton's great-grandson with the replica car, and we staged the race in Greenfield Village. Greenfield Village is in Dearborn, and it's a turn of the 1900th century, not 2000th century, village where a lot of Henry Ford's buildings were that they've moved on there. And there's a loop that you can do, and we restaged the race with Edsel driving the sweepstakes car, Alexander Winton's great-grandson driving that replica vehicle, and Dale Jarrett was the crew chief hanging on the side of Winton's car, and John Force, for those of you who know John the Drag Racer, was sitting there, played this crew chief for sweepstakes. It was really kind of cool, and sweepstakes won again. We staged race. The sweepstakes won again. Anyways, why do I bring that up? Performance has been in the DNA of the company and the Ford family since the beginning. From 1901 all the way through to today, performance has always been there. And it's important, it's the third reason in my mind of why it's important to be, it's the most important time to be Ford performance enthusiast, is that family support from Henry, the original race car driver, all the way to today to the Ford family who's working with the Ford performance side. The fourth piece is a little bit more esoteric. The executives who run Ford Motor Company, Mark Fields, Jim Farley, Joe Heinrichs, Stephen Odell, the guys who run the company are enthusiasts like us. Raj Nair, the global, I think his title is Global Vice President of Product Development and Research Engineering Worldwide, something along that lines. He has a race suit. He goes out and races. When we do Get Your Heart Racing, which is a charity for the Henry Ford Hospital System in Dearborn, we give out hot laps on the proving grounds for donations to the charity. We have to find drivers. Raj Nair volunteers to actually go out there on the weekend after he's been working on, he's responsible for every car that goes through Ford Motor Company dealers worldwide. And what does he spend his time doing on the weekend? Putting on his race suit, driving one of these cars to give charity hot lap rides. Farley races the car. Heinrichs is a performance enthusiast. All of the guys who run the company, guys and gals who run the company, are enthusiasts just like we are. And that's really important. When the men and women who run the company, who are making decisions about performance products and all the product portfolios, they know what it feels like to come off of turn 7 at Laguna Seca and going down the corkscrew, that they actually know what that feels like, that's a really cool thing. So based on those 4 things, it is the best time, in my mind, to be a Ford performance enthusiast. And we've been doing it for a while. I mean, if you think like the 60s, the old Total Performance era, that car over there, that one was actually built at Shelby and then shipped out to Tasca as a street car, and then they competed. Craig Jackson owns that car. His brother Brian used to race in it. That car actually raced in the Motorsports Reunion. I can't say Monterey Historics anymore. The Motorsports Reunion out in August at Laguna. He blew an engine during qualifying. So he started in the back, and it's amazing that somebody knew how to redo the head from Thursday night to Friday night overnight and got it in. He started 35th and finished 24th. But that 60s era, I mean, how many remember when the Mustang launched, right? I mean, I was just a twinkle in my well, I was more than a twinkle in my mom's eye at the time. I'm 50 as well, or I'm the same age as Mustang. But at that time period, it was a new generation, right? Lee Iacocca and the Fairlane Committee. Do you remember Mustang 1? Remember Gurney drove it out at Watkins Glen as the pace car out there? You know, they wanted to change and put another vehicle out there, and the Mustang was wildly successful. Longest continuous running nameplate, thank you Corvette for skipping a year, longest continuing running nameplate in the United States. So Lee Iacocca goes to Carroll and his merry band of hot rodders who just put a 260 and then a 289 in this little AC Cobra and came up with a Cobra 2 years previous in 62, comes to him and says, hey, I want you to make this a race car. And Carroll in his normal vernacular says something along the lines of, well, you can't make a racehorse out of a mule. And what does he go out and do? Wins Production B Championship in 65 and 66 with the GT350. About the same time, the Ford GT program. You know, Henry Ford II this time, going over, trying to work a deal with Enzo Ferrari to buy Enzo's company. It's documented in the book Goes Like Hell by A.J. Bain. There was, you know, a falling out. They didn't end up buying the company, but what Henry Ford II then wanted to do was come over and prove that we could be a performance company on a worldwide scale. And what did we do? Finished 1, 2, 3 in the 66 Le Mans, right? Crossed the finish line at the same time. They were so far ahead of number 4 and 5 that the first place finisher at the time, never actually ended up getting to win, one of the regrets, can't stop on the track, right? So you have to go really, really slowly. Let the other 2 Ford GTs catch up that were in 2nd and 3rd place. They were so far ahead of the 4th and 5th place team that they could do that to cross the finish line. And then we won in 66, 67, 68, and 69. Didn't win in 7. I don't think we won in 7. And they kept changing things, right? Changing displacement, changing aero, adding weight, doing all those different things. That performance era, let's just forget about the 70s for a second, right? This is no offense to John Clore and the King Cobra 2, right? You know, it was just a different era, right? Farrah Fawcett Majors and Charlie's Angels with the Mustang 2, I know. But, you know, from the 80s with the SVO, how many remember the SVO Mustang? Remember that one? 4-cylinder, turbo, ended up going into the turbo coupe, I think, afterwards. Fun, 175 horsepower, right? I mean, it was a lot of fun. I did 50 laps in a paperclip in Martinsville in that car. And that was what got me hooked. I mean, I'd started drag racing with my dad when I was young, but what got me to go left and then eventually left and right, first car with that SVO Mustang. Then we had SVE, Special Vehicle Engineering, and then SVT from 91 through 2014. All of those performance things have led to the Ford Performance Group. And that Ford Performance Group is going to generate, between now and 2020, 12 new performance derivatives. So when I say that it is the best time to be a Ford enthusiast, that's the reason why. So that's kind of what I wanted you guys to walk away with.